Hi, I'm Brenda Workman. Welcome to my kitchen. When my doctor recommended a plant-based diet to me several years ago to help me improve my health, I had a lot of research to do and I had a lot of beginning steps of implementing this in order to make it a lifestyle. I want to come alongside you and help you make it a lifestyle by providing practical tips for you in your plant-based journey. So over time, it took a while, my kitchen began to morph. So my refrigerator began to look different when you opened it up. My pantry began to look different. When I went to the grocery store, what was in my cart looked very different. I'm a West Virginia girl, grew up on biscuits and gravy and meat at every meal. So this was a learning curve for me. But I really wanted my health to improve and I wanted to age with a good quality of life. So I was willing to make the changes. So what I want to share with you today is what do I keep in my pantry that helps me be successful with this plant-based journey? And again, it's morphed over time. So when I show you these things that are in my pantry, don't think, oh my gosh, I've got to get my pantry set up like Brenda right away. It might take you a little while to figure out what sort of things you like and what you don't like and what you want to bring into your house and what makes it simpler for you. You're going to notice that I use a lot of jars. I think the reason why I do that is because number one, I have a lot of jars. We have a vegetable garden in the summertime and so I have a lot of jars already. But it helps me see when I'm almost out of something and I know next time I go to the grocery store I need to get more of that. So jars are what I use. You may decide that you want to use something different. So if you were to open up my pantry and take a peek inside, here's some things that you would find. I have a lot of dry beans in there. So these happen to be Great Northerns. I keep a lot of garbanzo beans, or sometimes people call them chickpeas, very similar. I have lentils. I always have lentils on hand. These are red lentils, and these are brown lentils. All of these typically are in bags at the grocery store, very inexpensive. I typically keep black beans, dried pinto beans. I have a variety of beans. Now, do I cook from the dry state all the time? No. Many times I open up a can of beans and use it for a recipe. But if I'm going to be home a couple days, 2 or 3 days, I love to cook dry beans. I just think they taste so much better. So, rule of thumb for the beans that I cook. Now, I'm not talking about lentils because you don't have to soak them ahead of time. But my garbanzo beans or my Great Northerns or my pintos or my black beans, I typically put them in a bowl, cover them quite a bit with water, let them set, usually overnight till the next day. Then I rinse them well. I put them in my Instapot and I usually cook them in veggie broth instead of water. If I want to add some onions, I can do that. I can add seasoning, salt and pepper later. I usually cook them in my Instapot for about an hour. And I think it's just because I like for my beans to be soft. I don't like them to be firm. And if my husband's going to share them with me, he likes them soft as well. So that is typical for most of the dry beans that I cook. But lentils, especially red lentils, cook really quickly and neither one need to be soaked ahead of time. So that's beans. I mean, I have a whole shelf of beans so that if I want to fix some beans from dry, I've got them. And if you get stuck in bad weather and can't get out and you live near me, come on over. I'll share some dry beans with you. Another shelf that I have in my pantry is grains. So I do like quinoa. It's very high in protein and I keep quinoa on hand. There's different varieties of quinoa, but I typically cook mine in a rice cooker. I rinse it well before I cook it. I have barley in there. This happens to be rolled barley, but you can get barley that's not processed. And so that could be added to soups if I'm making a vegetable soup. and I want to make it a little heartier, I could add a half a cup of barley, and that would really take it to the next level. This is wild rice. I always have brown rice on hand and white rice on hand. I just happen to have some wild rice that I found, so I like to use a variety of different types of rice. I don't typically use white rice unless I'm making sushi, or I'm making like an Asian Buddha bowl, or if I'm really in a big hurry and I want it to cook fast because I'm hungry and I want to eat now, then I might throw some white rice in my rice cooker just so it'll be faster. But I typically eat brown rice more than any other type. Here's some steel cut oats that are on my grain shelf. I have oats in different forms. So I have the oat groats, which are just like the kernels, and I love that cooked in an Instapot for breakfast in the mornings. This happens to be steel cut oats, but I also have rolled oats and I have quick oats as well. I keep the quick oats mostly because my husband prefers those. The rolled oats, sometimes I eat them for breakfast. Sometimes I eat oat groats or steel cut oats. But I do use the rolled oats in recipes a lot. So I have oats in many different forms in my pantry. But I have other grains in there. I have millet that I just use occasionally. But sometimes I like to mix it up a little bit and do a different grain, maybe to add to my salad or to add to my Buddha bowls. So I have grains in there. I also have dried fruit. So I usually keep dates on hand because I have some recipes that I go to quite often that have dates in it. Sometimes I'm just in the mood for something sweet, and I love a soft medjool date. I think it's delicious. So I keep dates in there. I keep raisins. These are two that I keep most all the time, mostly for recipes that I make. But sometimes I'll have other dried fruit too. I don't typically snack on it unless, like I say, maybe after I eat dinner, I may say, you know what, I'm going to eat a couple dates because I want something sweet. But typically I don't use them for snacks. I use them mostly for recipes. I do keep in my pantry some low-fat granola, either make it myself and keep it on hand or buy some at the grocery store. I always look for the lowest fat content because some of them can be way up there in fat grams. I do keep baking ingredients like everybody else in my pantry, so I have flour. I typically use whole wheat flour in baking, and I have that. And things like baking powder, baking soda, cornmeal, things that everybody else has, cocoa powder, just anything that I'm going to be using in recipes, just like everybody else, I keep those baking ingredients. I also keep seeds on hand, so I might have flax seeds, and in fact, I typically, this is the whole seed, and you need to grind it before you put it in your food. Or else it'll just pass right through your body. So typically what I do is I'll take some of this out every once in a while and about half fill a jar full of ground. I grind it with a coffee grinder, or you could do it in a NutriBullet if you wanted to, but make meal out of it. Put it in a jar. Once I use that up, then I get some more seeds, ground them, and so I usually have flaxseed on hand. I also have pumpkin seeds on hand most of the time. Sometimes I run out, but pumpkin seeds go in recipes that I make. But I also love to just throw pumpkin seeds in some oatmeal that I'm eating one morning or in a salad that I'm eating. It gives it a nice crunch. I have sunflower seeds. Sometimes I make salad dressings that use sunflower seeds. Sometimes I just throw them in a salad that I'm making. I typically always have toasted sesame seeds, and when I make an Asian dish or maybe I'm making veggie sushi, I use the toasted sesame seeds. So they're usually here. Nuts. Oh, I have nuts too. I have walnuts in my pantry. I probably use them more than anything. My husband likes pecans. We call them pecans from my part of the country, and we keep those on hand mostly for him. I don't use them a lot. Sometimes I have almonds on hand. Right now I don't have any, but sometimes I do. But we do keep nuts on hand to add to oats or to put in recipes, whatever. So not only do I keep these jars with these beans and grains and different things in it, so that I'm always ready, you know, rice, whatever it is I need, I just go to the shelf and get it off. But I also have canned things for convenience, just like everybody else does. So I do keep an assortment of canned beans in my pantry. So I typically have red beans and black beans, garbanzo beans. I might have pinto beans, Great Northern beans. And when I see myself running low on those, I usually stock up kidney beans. I typically have for like bean salads, or I have a 3-bean vegetable soup I make and kidney beans go in that. So I usually keep canned beans on hand. So that's in my pantry as well. Other veggies that are in a can, not a lot. I usually do fresh veggies or frozen veggies, but I obviously keep canned tomatoes. Also had some canned tomatoes from the garden from last year, which is good too. But to throw in soups mostly is what I use, those canned tomatoes, or chili, something like that. I like to make recipes with pumpkin in it. I love pumpkin muffins. I also have a banana bread that I make that has pumpkin in it that's so good. So typically keep a couple cans of pumpkin in there. I buy marinara, and I usually have a couple jars of marinara always in stock, so that if suddenly I'm in the mood for pasta, I might come home and cook me up some. And that's another thing I keep in my pantry is pasta. I tend to go towards the 100% whole wheat pasta, but let's say I come home and boil me some whole wheat pasta. I might saute some veggies in a skillet, maybe some zucchini, maybe some onions. I could do some mushrooms. I could do spinach in that. And then I could add the marinara to it, and then I could put that over my noodles. And so makes for a delicious pasta. I could put nutritional yeast, which I keep in my refrigerator, would give it a cheesy flavor. So marinara is a must too. There's recipes I make with marinara. I always keep on hand veggie broth. So I buy various brands in various places. I'm not overly particular. If you wanted to get the low sodium version, most stores have that, or you can order it from Amazon. But when I'm sauteing my veggies, I don't use oil. I just throw a little veggie broth in there to keep it from sticking. I use it for soups a lot. I usually always have a veggie broth that's open in my fridge, and then I have extras in the pantry because this is something I use a lot in my recipes. I used to buy the refrigerated plant milk, and I would buy oat milk usually because I liked it in my coffee in the morning. But I started hearing some things about all the ingredients that are in plant milk, and somebody recommended this brand, and it's on the shelf, and the ingredients in it are soybeans and water. And so I started buying it, and I like it just fine in my coffee, and I use it in recipes. I'm not much of a cold cereal eater, and I don't typically eat plant milk in my oatmeal, so it's mostly for my coffee and for my recipes that I make. But I usually always have 2 or 3 soy milks ready. You know, when I run out, I've got it in the pantry. So I know this sounds like a lot. It's like, good grief, Brenda, you could feed an army with all that you have, and that probably is true. But it morphed over time, like I told you. I began to weed out those things that were not helpful to my health and that were not plant-based like my doctor recommended. And I started bringing in, you know, spices to add to my food to make it delicious. Where I grew up, fat was typically added to food, even if it was veggies, to give it flavor. And now I'm learning how to put spices in my food to give it flavor. And so over time it began to morph, and my kitchen became very easy to be a plant-based person. So in another episode, we'll cover what do I keep in my refrigerator, maybe what I keep in my freezer. But hopefully this gives you some ideas. Again, you don't have to have such large jars of things. I do cooking classes, and So therefore, I usually have bulk amounts of things. And sometimes people give me things. So every once in a while, an organization will contact me and say, hey, we gave out free lentils today and nobody took them. Do you want our lentils? And I'm like, yeah, I love lentils. I love lentil soup, one of my favorites. So sometimes the food is given to me and I'm so appreciative I can use them in my cooking classes as well. So anyway, hopefully this is helpful to you to get your kitchen well stocked. And most of these things are not very expensive. Beans and rice, grains, oats, those things are not very expensive. Even canned beans, canned tomatoes. The most expensive thing is probably going to be your condiments that you add, or your spices possibly. And then when you start getting nuts and seeds, obviously those are expensive, but you don't use them that quickly. But hopefully this is helpful to you as a way of stocking your pantry so you can be successful too. So remember, there is power in your plate, and what you eat really, really does make a difference. See you next time.